where you sometimes have these amazing leaders where you learn from them. And I learned from that failure. So allow failures, let it mold you, break you, make you. And that's what makes you better.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Particle Accelerator podcast, where we talk to future thinking business owners about how to accelerate business. And I have a fascinating guest, Celia. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Benjamin. Hi, everyone. My name is Celia S. Daniels. My pronouns are she and they. And I have been in the industry for more than 30 years. I worked with the Fortune 100 companies in life sciences and healthcare industry. And I started my own company in 2017 after working for 30 years. And I wanted to venture into a space where I could humanize healthcare for underrepresented communities. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Benjamin. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. So I start out with some questions to get to know you.
Mm.
What was your first job? Mine was a paper route. I did a paper route when I first started. What was yours?
That's a great question. My first job was actually in a research institute in back in India. So one of the things the audience might not know is I'm an immigrant and I am from India originally. And my first job was in a Human Genome Project back in a research lab in India. So it was interesting to work in a crystallography lab where I was working on molecular modeling and DNA. In fact, for the audience, it might be interesting because that was the Silicon Graphics workstation, which came to India, and that's the same workstation they had used for Jurassic Park and Terminator 2. And I was so happy and thrilled to be working in that technology, and I was so fascinated. That was my first job, and I love it. And I wouldn't miss it for the world. One of the most amazing experiences I had was in that lab back in India.
Cool. What toy or hobby did you have as a child that inspired what you do career-wise today?
Absolutely. I am a musician. I wrote a lot of songs back in my younger, I would say probably in my middle school, high school. I wrote a lot of songs. And most of my songs that I wrote came from my experiences struggling as a person with gender identity disorder. I would call it as gender incongruence. And these songs were more about how much God loves a person like me. And I wrote all these songs. I learned, I'm a self-taught guitarist. So I enjoy playing music. And I played hockey back then and also cricket, coming from an Indian background. So lots of fun hobbies that I had. I think the most I enjoyed was writing songs and creating this kind of amazing music. So it was so passionate, one of the passionate days for me.
Cool. What was your favorite and least favorite course in college?
Oh my God, you got me there. So my favorite course was, I would say, in computer science. I have a degree in computer science, master's, and my undergrad in computer science. The the least favorite was chemistry. I hated chemistry. I did not like chemistry at all because it was really hard for me to put my head around all the jargons in chemistry, and I avoided it. I took a course where I could avoid chemistry, so I had math, physics, and computer science major. So chemistry was one of the areas where I couldn't. My favorite actually was biology. I wanted to be a doctor, but unfortunately, I ended up I couldn't get any entrance into the medical industry. But I ended up in the, I would say, in the computer science. This is in the mid 80s, and that's the time computers were coming to India, and it was such a fascination. I was so excited, and I was putting in all my effort to get into the computer science part of it. And that's what I do even today.
Well, that's cool. As a fellow computer science person, that's awesome. And I kind of found the same, but with engineering, they wanted me to take like third year physics and third year chemistry to go forward in engineering. And I'm like, man, I think computer science is the right thing for me. I really kind of took in engineering school, I took the easy road.
Mm.
but found new challenges in computer science. What quote from a famous person lives in your mind rent free?
Right now, I might sound very biblical because I was reading Bible in the morning and I felt like there was something which of course, the leader that I follow more closely is the life of Jesus Christ, especially in Bible, and it always fascinates me when I read about some of the verses in the Bible, and it kind of hits me hard, and it stays in my mind. Is um, that God, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. It's in Psalms. He has a beautiful verse that I don't know where exactly in Psalms, but I love that word where it says that God cares for every human being and he carefully crafts them. It's like a circuit board. He carefully and beautifully make every human being, and he cares for them. And it's such an amazing verse that I read from the Bible. So that's why that always fascinates.
It's also one like knit me together in my mother's womb. That
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. When you saw my unformed body, um, and you knit me together in my mother's womb. Yes.
cool. What was the greatest invention or discovery in the past 300 years?
I think in the past 300 years, the biggest step that I am always fascinated with science and technology. For me, computer invention was fascinating. It was great because I was working on all the punch cards to the big disks, and then it slowly transitioned into the actual computers, like working on Honeywell Bowl, wax BMS systems. You probably know what I'm talking about. Some of the younger generation might not even know what I'm talking about. And I transitioned and I moved in all that space, but I came to this part where we saw the smartphones. And once the smartphones came in, it completely changed the entire way in which we look at technology today. It was amazing to have a little computer in your hand, and it was a fascinating invention. I would say contributing to the various people who were behind the smartphones. Smartphones has been always my fascination, and it's really helped. Of course, everyone's natural tendency to say AI. I would say AI is not my fascination because it's always been there. It's just that it's gotten better and intelligent through the learning process. So I would say it's always been the smartphone that made our lives much more interesting. Communication became easier, knowledge, expansion of knowledge became easier, and also you kind of globally expand your horizon in understanding different technologies around the world and the way in which the world is progressing. To me, that was fascinating, and I'm glad to be a part of that generation. Funny story, I still have all my Blackberries and the old gadgets in my garage. I usually put it in there, and then I look at my Palm Pilot, my Nokia phones. I'm such a gadget buff. I usually collect them, and but after I came to smartphones, I just stopped.
Yeah. Yeah. I also feel like we're coming out of the information age and we're not quite very good at it as humans, right? We still have a lot of false information and the information is all very politicized and biased.
Right.
And we're putting AI on top of it. And so there's
Mm.
concerns I have like that we seem kind of irresponsible with the information, the power of information, much like
Mm.
we were responsible with the environment during the Industrial Revolution, right? There's kind of the
Mm.
period of like, hey, this is really great, and then all this irresponsibility after. And it seems like we haven't quite gotten the responsibility around the information age, and we're adding, AI right on top of it. So, uh, super fascinated to see how we can put guardrails around information, or at least figure out how to be more responsible with information before we start throwing it into AIs and teaching it how to do things. So we'll go into some more of our innovation topics here. What tech trend significantly impacted you or your industry, and how did you respond?
So, working in the medical and the life sciences space, I've seen how much the technology has been part of it because of the data. especially when you have the right amount of data, and the data helps you in making these decisions and also looking at the way in which they can improve the healthcare for people who are, different demographics across the world. One fascinating thing that I found was when you have the right amount of data, you have the right research, you have the right information, and instead of hallucinating, like even AI, sometimes in the lack of data, it starts hallucinating a lot of information. This hallucination could be really dangerous. Like you rightly said, it's important for us to put these guardrails and also bring that mindful governance over AI and the data. End of the day, if you have garbage, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get garbage in, garbage out. But when you have the right amount of data and the technology that has improved in the healthcare space, and how many the research that we have done, collecting the human data, the EMR data, and not just a data from a medical standpoint, but also holistic data. See, for instance, I'm an Asian Indian. So when I have my, and especially Asian Indians are prone to cardiovascular disease because of the food habits back in India. And I've lived in India for almost 27 years. And I've lived in actually 28 years in India and 27 years in the US. I've seen that my food habits have changed, and sometimes it can probably lead to certain disease, and which we probably don't know, and stress that you accumulate in this process. But also being mindful of the technology and being fascinated with the fact that I look at it as a patient. Every human being is a patient. And how do we build that ecosystem around that patient that enables that patient not only to have a good, like work environment or a healthcare environment, or when we look at it from a standpoint where the personal data collected is more like a financial data, personal data, it could be also the health data. But and trying to make some meaningful assumptions around it. So that takes the data from one level of, I would say, from a just a, I would say, from a descriptive analytics to a prescriptive analytics, where you are also looking at how you can move to the point of creating more health systems which can help in solving a lot of issues today in cancer research, and how my data is being taken and used in a particular research. And I've always found it fascinating when we have lack of data, because it's important for us to make sure the medicines we produce today, it can save lives, but I also need to know how does it work for different demographics across the world. And that's where I'm more fascinated in bringing my experience into the whole continuum of human existence, and start looking at it not from a masculinity or from a femininity standpoint, but looking at it more from a humanity standpoint as to how do we actually take this data and humanize it and make sure that, it's the data around Benjamin, what can you take care of? Wellness, your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, even your spiritual health. It's all a part of who you are, and the data is so important. So I look at data like a data halo, as every human being has a data halo, and that data that surrounds you. So, and what we need to make sure that the data that surrounds you, we need to make sure that we govern the data and people use our data in the right manner. And that's why today, as much as data starts expanding and people start looking at the variety of heterogeneous and homogeneous data that we produce, social media at a workplace, the data can be captured and made into a harmful thing as well. They can always use data in the wrong way. They can take advantage of the data and misuse the data. And that's where I think it's important for us to have these research. More and more, when you look at AI and ML and machine learning, I've worked in all these areas. I've built data lakes for commercial purpose, and also clinical data lakes across the continuum of product development, for drug development. I've seen that a lot of that depends on data. It's all about collecting patient data from different demographics and making better medicines. To me, if health is not right, if you don't have the right kind of healthcare and the right amount of medicines, then we don't have a right care. And that's where I speak a lot about how much important it is for us to do research across different demographics, different people across the world, and create those kind of inclusive environments, even in the clinical trials and clinical research. So that's what I do a lot of my work in today, in humanizing healthcare.
I was just talking to another guest, and they have invented a way of sampling taking a larger sample of blood, um,
Mm,
through more of like a kind of a doping machine or dialysis type of machine, so they can look at more of your blood. And a lot of times I find the data, it's garbage in, garbage out, but it's also like, where's the signal? So like if we want to know more about our microbiome, typically we would do like a stool sample, right?
mm,
But then that is only one sampling. And so then we have our genetic makeup, but then we have our microbiome's genetic makeup, but we
mm,
still really don't know what are the molecules that are actively at work within our system. So there's
mm,
so much of also like a signal issue. Like, are we even collecting the right data? And so I'm fascinated by that, and think that there's so much we can do to establish, a new signal, and make sure that, like, are we even looking at the right sets of data? And what we're finding on the business side, aside from healthcare, is that it's a significant amount of work just to get it all together so that it can be analyzed by AI or machine learning. That
mm.
most of the data is in all kinds of different places and needs significant work to be collected. What are three technology innovations you're betting on to drive business growth, or kind of what technology innovations are you tracking?
I'm tracking a lot in the healthcare space, especially when it comes to the, um, I would say, the biases we have. So one of the areas that I work is in the, in humanizing the workplace. And when I also talk about humanizing workplace, I'm tracking how the providers are mindful of the data, and especially people who are medical professionals, and how this data is being captured by the insurance company, where they put some policies around how much they want to pay for it. And then you have the research being done more from the clinical side, where the drug development is being done to in order for us to provide this kind of care. So I look at data, or I look at technology, and to me, the trends that run in my head are mostly about human trends. Like, what are the advances in technology that's really driving change within the healthcare space, like new ideas. I lost my mom when I was, my mom is a nurse, and in 2008, I called my mom and I was chatting. That's the time we bought a house in California. I live in LA. I wanted to bring my mom and my dad, and when I called my mom and I said, "Mom, I bought a house, and I'd love for you to come visit us." And my mom said, "I don't think I can come because I have adenocarcinoma." Which was just my heartbreaking at the time, because my mom couldn't even see the best part of my life, where I established myself and I started my own family here, and my mom couldn't see it. And so I told my mom, "Okay, I'm going to fly to India and see how I can take care of you." And that's the time I really thought about technology. I thought about what advances in medicine is there for a stage 4 cancer in lungs. And what can we do? What is the best we can do? I looked at all the possibilities in US and in India, took her to the best hospitals. They gave 6 months for my mom. But before my mom passed away, she said, I'm in the right place. Don't worry about me. I'm going to God." And I'm sorry, I'm getting a little spiritual here, but I'm a spiritual person. And to me, it really opened my eyes to see that there was hope in what she was doing. But at the same time, I was thinking, is there hope even in medical side, where folks who don't believe in God, or who don't believe in medicine, how can we give them hope in this space, whereby helping them understand this is so important? My mom passed away 8 months later. And one of the things that I learned from my mom passing away is how could I have prevented this? What could I have done? My mom was a medical professional all through her life, and she was working in the most innovative lab in India. It's Atomic Power Station. It's a government hospital, and she had all the technology, and even the insurance completely paid for both my parents in India. They are so privileged to have that kind of insurance in India, where they were just paid lifetime. So I didn't have to spend a dime when my mom was going through the best, therapy and a diagnosis when she was battling with this. I wish we had a way to humanize healthcare for all of us. It's kind of polarized a lot, and it's being commercialized. And that's what sometimes it really breaks my heart when I see the healthcare system in America is almost more than 10 times the cost that we pay in other countries like India. And the same medicine that I get here, the same Novartis in India is much cheaper because of the global economics, the way they price these drugs. But I look at it in such a way that I'm able to look at the technology, but also look at the advancements as much as the technology advances. Is it really helping the human beings? That's the part where I think, for me, my heart always goes back there and say, how can it help in the environment? How can it help people who are homeless? How can it help people who are struggling with cancer? How can it help of people who are struggling with mental health issues? Because as human beings, we all go through this. The advances are amazing. I've been in a lot of healthcare conferences in technology. They talk about how great and amazing it is, the AI, virtual reality, and all that. But at the end of the day, if your health is messed up, none of that matters. And that's the area where I started focusing on because I wanted to humanize it. I wanted to make sure that we keep it more accessible for people in different demographics and based on their ethnicities. I mean, I identify as a trans person, but for me, when I look into medicine, for me, it's important that I look at it in such a way that it's helpful for my gender incongruence that I'm going through. It also it's important for me as a human being. I'm not just a trans person because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm married to an amazing woman, and I have a great daughter who's 24 years old, and we have a great family. And what I fail to understand is sometimes technology can also be a boon and a curse. As much as we advance in technology, it's important for us to make sure that we are inclusive of other human beings who are different. Like when the Black Lives Matters happened, my heart just went out in helping the Black community. There was a lot during COVID. I'm one of those folks. I can raise my hand and say that during COVID, I took Johnson and Johnson vaccination, and within 4 weeks, I had a cardiac arrest.
Mm,
So, and I did, and a lot of people, I'm actually working in the medical space, and I get it, right? So
yeah.
I understood what happens, and I was, it's not that I demonize the COVID vaccine and all that. Sometimes it works for some, sometimes it doesn't work. For me, it kind of happened, and I didn't know what to do because I'm here trying to go to the right medicine and take the right way to help me live, and then it happens. So instead of looking at it, I started looking at, how is technology really being tested? How is technology really being used in a way that human beings can rely on it? Human beings can have the data, that invention, that creation that we have, and start creating these medicines in such a way that it really changes lives of people in a more positive way. And so I started focusing on it and doing a lot of work in especially AI and ML, the biases we have, like you said, the governance we have. How do we really bring in more visibility, more data in terms of creating a lot more technology? But yeah, to your point, I look at technology as a tool. It's not technology doesn't lead me. I lead the technology.
Yeah.
Technology follows me.
Yeah. And I very much like we have very much two toolkits, right? We have the naturopath
Mm,
toolkit where we're talking to a naturopath that's somewhat like excluding I wouldn't say they're excluding, but they would not recommend, you take like an Ozempic or a semaglutide type supplement for weight loss unless you had very, very high blood sugar. So they're
mm,
going to say, like, don't go into the medical area for solutions unless unless you're indexing very on the high side of, like, they'll resist some of the medical opportunities, right? They might
mm,
not recommend like a hormone replacement therapy unless you're very, very like you test very, very low in a particular hormone or something. But
mm,
there's kind of this natural path segment of choices that can be made And then there's the medical solutions. And so we find ourselves having to like really kind of juggle between those two, because in the US, these two are like opposite planets, right? These are very diverted, where it's very hard to find like a functional wellness doctor that's really navigating both of these. Like I would call that a unicorn in the US. I'm guessing, I don't have personal experience, but I'm guessing in India that's not the case, that it's more common that you would get diverge natural and medical like opinion. And I think that's something really missing. Like, quite frankly, at least from my wife's perspective, who's very much like a biohacker and interested in all of those naturopath solutions, she's very distrusting of the medical opinion because of how biased it is by pharma and by the commercialization of healthcare. So just thought I'd share that because it seemed like it fit. And just I'm really experiencing this kind of divergence, that there's the natural path and the medical path, and those are so far, they seem so far from each other, which causes me to kind of do grab and go. So, okay, I want my testosterone is testing low. I'm going to go get a TRT prescription and kind of grab and go. And
Mm.
I feel like a lot of Americans are kind of in that same dilemma between having to
Right.
discover their own natural remedies and then dabble in the medical. And if they go to a doctor, they can easily be 5 prescriptions deep and really not helping their symptoms.
Especially when I came out, I was talking to my doctor about my sugar levels. My doctor immediately said, it also depends on the doctors. My doctor said, I want you to do exercise. I want you to have a good diet and then come back. I'm not going to give you medicines. And I was thinking, and here all my friends, they're going for metformin and they're like, oh, I took metformin and I'm now slimmed down. And I'm thinking to myself, I want to take metformin so that I can slim down or something, but it's not really the right way to do it. So I started going to the gym. I started eating healthy. I started making sure that I do the right thing instead of just grab and go, like you said, right? It's not about how do we also need to make sure what goes into our body is very important. And so when I started taking all these, when I started eating avocado by increasing my HDL and started looking at it, now a doctor saying, when I recently took my A1C, my doctor was very excited. He was like, "Oh, I don't have to prescribe medicine for you because you seem to have managed your sugar levels." And to me, that was a big testament of what I've seen, especially in US. I think even in India, sometimes the doctors, when they see something, they're always in a very diagnostic mode. They're like, "Okay, you got this. I'm going to give you this. You got this," but they don't really treat the holistic person.
Right.
Like as you're talking about your wife's experience, it's important to look at it from a holistic perspective. That's why in India they have a lot of herbal medicines and holistic medicines where they really take time to understand the patients. These days, doctors don't have time to understand patients. They leave it to the nurses. They say the nurse, "Hey, talk to the patient. I'm gonna come here and just give the diagnosis." So I'm actually educating the doctors. I have a company where I educate the doctors as well, just to make sure that they are more listening to patients, understanding the journey, but also educating a particular demographics. If it's like the Black community, and I also educate the disabled community because I feel like sometimes when you have, like when you're autistic or when you're having neurodivergent issues, you're not heard. When I go to the, it's funny, when I go to the doctor's office, my blood pressure is always high. And the doctor says, "Oh, your blood pressure is high." And I tell him, "It's because I'm seeing you. My blood pressure goes up 20 points." Not that I don't want to come, but it just goes up and I don't know what to do. And then I don't want my doctor to take that 20 plus reading into account and then start giving me medicines because I'm really worried. So I tell him, and then he says, "Okay, calm down. Let's just sit down for a while." I sit down for a while, and then he takes my blood pressure and it's probably come down a little bit, not to the point where I want it to be. So I think there are a lot of times we make assumptions based on that spot time. They're like,
Right.
"You're here in my office, and I'm going to give you this medicine." And so I told the doctor, I'm glad my doctor is very, he's an Armenian, and he's from UCLA, and that's kind of helped me in a point where I started looking at all the amazing advances in medicine, but also still scaling back a little bit and thinking that I want to scale back. I don't want to completely jump in and take metformin or any medicines that would artificially help me reduce my weight when I can do it physically. I better pull myself to the gym, and I better exercise and do all the right things, eat rightly. What he's saying makes a lot of sense today, and it's all instant gratification, right? Everyone wants to do something fast instead of waiting and looking at the way in which the technology advances today.
What do you think are some of the most significant gaps between your ambitions and realities today?
I think my ambition is more on the human side of things, especially being in the tech industry. My ambition is to see things like going to moon is normalized. People, we have advancements where we need to first save our planet as much as we are interested in going to the moon or to Mars. We also need to think about how do we use technology, the advancements to do everything possible to save our planet. In so many places in California, we had forest fire. There's a lot going on. Yeah, I had a forest fire really close to our house. So, and that's the time we started thinking about, okay, do we need to move or do we need to stay? And sometimes it's important for us to be mindful of, how can we take care of the environment around our house and environment around our community so that we can avoid these forest fires, and what can we do? Interestingly, in California, I think they are building a bridge for the mountain lions. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a bridge that it's not from the taxpayers' money. It's from Boeing. Boeing is sponsoring the project, so they're building this bridge. And I walk through that place all the time. My wife and I, we hike, and I see they're trying to build something for mountain lions. I wish they had spent that money for with something else in homelessness or other things, instead of building a bridge for millions of dollars for a mountain lion to cross. And while they were building, a mountain lion got killed. So it's so funny. Sometimes we need to set our priorities right, and what is really needed versus what is nice to have versus what is.
Yeah, I totally agree. How are you trying to maintain a competitive edge in your consulting and in your pursuit of um, all the things that you're into?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I started doing in my company is my lived experiences have mattered a lot, especially in the healthcare industry, where I talk a lot about, when you're a person who is transgender and also a person who is neurodiverse and Asian Indian, there is a lot of intersectional identities we bring into those mix. So I have been able to bring in a lot more. I've been able to look at humanity as, is inclusion really causing exclusion? It's actually a funny conversation that I had with someone else, that because sometimes they say that, hey, you're an unrecognized community, so you're talking about, all the inclusion that is important. But here's one thing. Especially, I want people to understand that when you have, well, one of my friend, he's a white man, and he's a Caucasian. He lost his wife and to cancer, and he has to raise two kids. Comes to the office, doesn't find a community here, and he sees community all around. And he was saying, "See, I don't know where to go. I'm so heartbroken." And it was really hard for me to really exclude that kind of a space when I'm thinking, is inclusion really causing exclusion in organizations? So I started building that inclusivity, and not just with recognized communities, but includes the whole people who are we are Caucasians, people who are Black, who are Hispanic, taking all the demographics and seeing where are the areas, what they can do, how can we be allies to each other. A lot of what we're having in companies today, it's creating a segregation instead of more inclusion. I see a lot of areas where people are being their own. So I started talking to ERGs about how can you bring ERGs are employment resource groups, on how can you bring that inclusivity, and that brings a lot more creativity. When you have a project, bring in different people from various countries and different demographics so they can think about it more innovatively. For instance, I'll give you an example. There was a big, amazing product that was brought into one of my client sites, and my client asked me for recommendation. It's basically for a person who is going through where they fit in. It's a medical product for mental health issues. And when I looked at the product, and everyone approved the product, and I looked at it, and it said it had colors which are very interesting. And I said, you have colors in this product, and the entire product is based on colors. Now, let's think about it for a moment. What if the person is colorblind? How will this person know what they're doing? And what if the survey person is conducting surveys colorblind? How would they know what to do? What if and the number of clicks that you need to do in order for you to get into the product is like massive amount of clicks. And it doesn't understand my accent because I'm from a different country. My accent might be different. And how does the chatbots work? So when I started asking all these questions in the product, they had to rethink about the product. And I also wrote to the product company and I told them that, hey, I can help you in creating an environment and a product that can be inclusive to people who are disabled, colorblind, who have accessibility issues. They can't even use their hands because they probably are born with total, hands and born with limbs, and they are not able to even move. So a lot of that I started doing, and I found that even in the technology, as the technology is advancing, let's also look back a little bit on people who are struggling with it and also helping those communities. It may not be just a struggle in terms of disability or accessibility, but even mentally. Like this man, friend of mine, who came and said, I don't have a community here in my office, Celia, what do I do? And so my heart went out, and we started creating that kind of an inclusive conversations in workplaces where we created an allyship with people who probably are, it's not that everybody has a privilege today on this planet. It's not about someone doesn't have, someone has. I think that's where I found an edge in my conversations. And a lot of times when I humanize technology, and then I go back to the technology vendors, they're just blown away. Like, how did you know this? We know that everyone was approving of this, but you are able to look at it in a different point of view. It's because, it's from the background that I come from, and I understand how these things work. So that is where I have been in a much technology edge over a lot of other companies. Today, my competition is like KPMG, Gartners, and of the world, because I do a gap analysis in the entire organization. I take the DEI in the organization and I kind of break it apart. I tear it apart and I tell them where to change, what to do better.
Mm-hmm.
I also look at clinical practices. When a woman enters the doctor's office, are they taking them seriously versus a man enter the doctor's office? Sometimes women are not taken seriously. My wife is telling me they're not taking them seriously. So that's where I think it's important for us to educate doctors and kind of create that kind of an inclusive environment. So I speak with experience. I speak with a good understanding of behavioral, structural, and also the operational changes that can happen in an organization. I've created a gap analysis tool where I use that and put that framework on top of this area so that everybody in the company gets recognized. Everyone feels that they're included. Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings, no matter what gender, color we are, where culture, country we are human beings, and we need to humanize technology. We need to humanize a lot of these things, and that's where I feel like people are missing out the point.
Yeah.
So I go back to that, and that's why I call my business as humanizing healthcare.
Yeah, that's cool. One of my highest performing teams was also the most diverse.
Mm,
And without intention, without a D&I program,
mm.
and I would kind of joke, very jokingly, say, I have from the Mormon to the Muslim, and everything in between.
I like that.
And I had just about a team of 12, and it was super diverse.
Mm,
Man, we could not decide where to go to dinner. And
mm,
it was like if we wanted to do some you know extracurricular or team building activity, it was almost
mm,
impossible to agree even where to have dinner together or eat a meal together, just because it was so diverse. But man, that team worked so well, everybody collaborating and having different points of view. And
mm.
when it came to getting work done, we were all united under the mission and the goal. So that just came to my mind as you were discussing. But
You said beautifully. I love that Mormon to Muslim. The funny thing is this, Ben, but we always think about DEI as a concept, right? It's always been there. It's like all the companies I worked, we had DEI even before DEI came into existence. So when they said DEI, I was like, I already do that. What is a big deal? And to me, so when you're talking about these things, it's so important for us to know that I've been in this country for like 27 years, and I always worked in different parts of the country, and the culture could be different, but I always felt like there was a diverse teams everywhere. And then I had some good experiences, I should say, and also embracing the culture and from different backgrounds. It really creates innovation. It also brings in a lot more productivity in the team. It brings in different ideas. Like you rightly said, we need to have diverse teams also that looking at it, or it's not intentional. Sometimes it's unintentionally it happens the way it happened. My team was so diverse. I had folks I didn't even know. When I really think about the team now, I had folks from China, I had folks from um, Nicaragua, I had people from Puerto Rico, Europe, India, of course. We had some consulting and outsourcing work, and then in the US. So there's a lot that's we've been working in today, and we already been a part of these technologies. But you rightly said it's important for us to bring in that that creativity that really comes in when you have diverse teams and diverse thinking, not just diverse teams, but also a good diverse thinking too.
Yeah. What lessons have you learned from a failure or something that you were engaged in that failed to deliver the expected value?
I love this question. I always learn from my failures because from my successes I've not learned anything. It's just that sometimes I got so proud about myself. I'm like, I'm very good, but I've learned something called servant leadership. It's something that I learned, especially when I read about the way in which Jesus was doing the ministry and working towards social justice and a lot of things that mattered to me. I found the servant leadership was so important. The reason why I say that is I had a lot of people in my team who were women working in the technology space, and I'm talking about like 20, 15, 20 years back. And I had a compassionate heart at the time, and women were not really ready to move forward. Like they wouldn't take up an initiative. They wouldn't do something because there were like 10 men jumping to take that one initiative. And there was one woman in my team. And I kept pushing her, saying, hey, you need to do more. And today she said, if not for your pushing and if not for your sending me for certification and upskilling myself, I won't be a senior director in this company today. I was just happy being a project manager because I thought I was self-sufficient. But that's where I think about it, and I feel like we have a lot of leaders who are very pompous today. We don't have servant leaders. We don't have leaders who are a model and an example today. We have a lot of leaders who are so much very performative. They are not transformative. And I always say this, that change doesn't happen in the letterhead or the leaders of the company, but change happens in the heart of the employees. And that can come only when the employees trust the leaders.
Hmm. Yeah.
One last, yeah, go ahead.
Well, a lot of leaders treat people like tools, right? They're just,
Commodity. Yeah, you're right. Commodity. Right? Come and do my job and go.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, like the,
And that's what I think. You're right. And that's what I think it's important for us to, when you're a leader, you treat people, you will give them second chance. And also you make sure that they are creative. If they are, when I was running a large initiative where I had 600 people reporting to me across the globe, it was a large outsourcing initiative for a $26 billion biopharma. I had teams all over the world, and every time someone would say, "Hey, I'm feeling, I want to talk to you," I would find time. I would find a coffee time. I would find a lunch hour where I would sit with this person, and not necessarily this person was a manager. They were probably an intern or a fresher who joined my account, and I would sit and spend time with them and I would give them goals. It's not just listening to them, but I would give them goals as to, okay, I see your point. I know that you don't know this, you don't know Tableau or you're working on AWS. I want to help you. I want to encourage you to do certification in Salesforce. I want to encourage you to do certification in Agile, and I can help you. We can also fund your training. And I started working with one intern who came to my account many years back. Started pushing him, and I started meeting him every 3 months. The guy is a vice president today. And when I As a leader, when I see leaders, when I create leaders, I'm so happy. And that's what leadership is to me. A leadership is to create leaders, not to be a leader, not to be a boss, but to create leaders. And many years later, I'm just sitting and looking at all of them. My life has, my journey has transitioned very differently. But I look back at all the people that I worked with, and they're all in great companies. They're now CEOs, and my heart just warms up. It's like they don't even know me. In my journey, I've gone to another place, but they know what I did, and for me, that warms my heart
Yeah,
to see that.
that's great. Would you can you share an experience or some advice for people who are beginning their career journey?
Absolutely, failure is very important. When you have failures, you learn from them, and do not get disheartened when you go through failures. And in your journey, just be more mindful and be more open to working with people you don't agree with. If you work with people you agree with, sometimes you will never learn. And sometimes you come across folks who are much different. I work with in the tech industry in certain spaces where people don't agree with being trans. But one thing that I learned is they don't disrespect me, and that's what matters. I don't agree with my wife on so many things today. We disagree on a lot of things, but we don't disrespect each other. I think that's where I think it's important for the workplace to think about it. Hey, I don't agree with you, but I respect you. And that's what I've seen. And that's where I have been in a point where I tell people that um, your learning lesson comes from working with people who disagree with you, who say that you're wrong, and who are able to challenge you. And that's where you learn as a leader, you learn as a team, you learn to collaborate. And these days, when someone says, I disagree with you, we take it in the wrong sense. But we need to take it positively and think about, what do you mean by it? And how can when you say that I'm not performing well, what am I lacking? What can I do? Instead of saying, hey, you have a bias against me. No, I don't have a bias against you. I'm just telling you because I've seen that certain spaces you can really do better. So I think we need to be more positive in taking feedback. I've got a lot of feedback in my life. Sometimes I took it negatively and I thought maybe because I'm different. But then I analyzed it as an entrepreneur and someone told me, are you doing this A, B, and C? And I started thinking about it. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do this instead of just thinking that it's me. And so I have seen a lot in the industry, and I always advise people that be in spaces where you're challenged, be in spaces where you're being disagreed and in a nice way, right? And that way you learn to be more innovative. You may learn to learn from your mistakes, and it's okay if you fail 100 times, 200 times, million times, but you will succeed. I have learned a lot from my failures. Trust me, in my life, one of the largest deal that I was working on was a big failure. I was in a call with lawyers for many years because this deal was something my CEO sent and asked me to close the deal. I wasn't able to close it. And I felt so disheartened because I had like three huge successes and there was one big failure for me. And I always regret thinking maybe I did something wrong. But my CEO once said, hey, we can't control this. You're doing the right thing. And that mattered to me. And I'm still in touch with my CEO. He's where you sometimes have these amazing leaders where you learn from them. And I learned from that failure.
Yeah.
So allow failures, let it mold you, break you, make you. And that's what makes you better.
Speaking about feedback, we have an internal mechanism where we ask, can I give you some feedback, right? To make sure people are ready for it. That kind of gives them a second to, okay, brace themselves and make sure they're listening. And then we say, I'm experiencing you as, and then and we train this to the people who come on board. Hey, I'm experiencing you as sloppy in this particular execution of this thing. Um, and we have that mechanism so that we're not dysfunctional in the not telling of the truth and not being honest about things. And then people can do the same thing back to me. They can come to me and say, hey, I'm experiencing you as not listening to me. I'm telling you what's really going on, but you want to make this other decision. And then we can have the dialogue around the feedback. And it's been very powerful. And it's also a little bit rare I think in especially outsource culture to have that and like train that. So yeah, I definitely agree that sometimes you need like a little bit of a protocol for feedback so that
Mhm.
it's not so that people know how to give it, right? And so we've worked on that.
You know, I mean, managing a large team, I had 20 managers, and in turn, they had other teams. So whenever I give them feedback, I make sure that I don't wait for the last minute to give them feedback.
Mhm.
Suppose I'm in a restaurant and the person says something, I would just go out and say, "Hey, when you mentioned that, I was kind of curious whether you meant this way or that way." And then I correct them because that's how you grow. You don't wait for the final feedback time and then put all that, and they're like, "What do you mean? I don't know. I didn't mean that." So it's important for us to find the right moment to give the feedback and also coach them, mentor them, coach them. I've done that a lot, and I always met with my managers, my immediate managers who are reporting to me at least once a week. We would go out, have a happy hour, and just kind of build that community. Even today, after 10 years after I left an organization, I have people reaching out to me for advice from my managers. They call me and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about this. I'm doing something new, maybe innovative." And it's amazing when you really have that kind of, relationship because that's what I believe in.
That's cool. Well, awesome. It's been great talking to you today. If people like what you've had to share, um, how should they connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn, so you can connect on LinkedIn. I also have a company called Rebecon.com. I started that company because my daughter's name is Rebecca. It's spelled as Rebkah. So I started my company with Reb Cable and Rebecon Consulting, and my business is more to humanize healthcare and for all of us, and that's where I come from. I'm on LinkedIn, so I would say connect with me on LinkedIn, and especially thank you so much, Benjamin, for this amazing platform. I really liked our conversation
Yeah,
because it's always fun to kind of talk about technology and then humanize it, technology and humanize it, apply it. I love it.
great. Thank you so